Welcome. Today we step into a dark chapter of history.
You are accused of witchcraft, and this is your entire life. You were born in winter, when the air inside the house turns white with breath instead of light. Snow grinds against the walls outside. Inside, everything smells of smoke, wet straw, sheep's wool, and blood. Your mother bites her lip so she will not scream too loudly. Loud births make people uneasy. In your village, a cry can call more than a midwife. You come into the world blue, slick, and too quiet. They slap your feet. At last you wail. That is the first time your voice proves something simple. You are not dead yet. They wrap you not in softness, but in rough cloth that scratches your skin and smells of old sweat. Above you is a low ceiling blackened by years of soot. Wind hisses through the gaps in the boards. A bundle of drying herbs hangs in one corner. The floor is packed earth. Everything is cramped, damp, and dim. You do not know any words yet, but you are already living among fear with many faces. Failed crops, fever, wolves, the landlord, winter cough, babies who do not live to walk. Your life is not held together by hope. It is held together by endurance. You grow fast, as children do in places where no one can afford a real childhood. By 5, you are carrying kindling to the hearth. By 6, you are scraping dung in the yard while the cold burns your fingers raw. By 7, you know the sound of a man dying behind a wall. By 8, you watch a woman who bled after childbirth carried out under a sheet. No one sits you down and explains death. They do not need to. They place it in front of you until you understand it on your own. You learn by smell before you learn by reason. Sweet rot means apples turning bad. Sour means the porridge is spoiled. Iron means blood. Sharp heat means fresh dung in spring. Sickly sweetness means a body left too long. Smoke means home, work, hunger, sleep. It gets into your hair, your bread, your blanket, your skin. You wake inside smoke and you fall asleep in it. That is what shelter smells like. That is what survival smells like. In spring, your mother takes you to the edge of the woods to gather herbs, not for beauty, for pain, for fever, for stomach sickness, for birthing, for sleep, for bleeding. She does not call it wisdom. She simply knows where yarrow grows, where to cut willow bark, where bitter leaves can settle the gut, and where berries can stop a heart. She makes you crush leaves between your fingers and breathe them in. The world around you is not a mystery. It is a storehouse of things that may keep somebody alive a little longer. The first time you understand that women are feared, you are watching an old, bent woman set a boy's broken wrist. She smells of garlic, smoke, and something bitter. Her joints are swollen. Her face looks like dried bark. She orders the boy's father to hold him still. The boy screams until his voice cracks. Then the bone goes back into place. A week later, he is running again, crooked but living. No one thanks the old woman too warmly. On the way out, they cross themselves behind her back. People will accept help. They do not like to stand too close to the hands that give it. Your childhood is measured less by birthdays than by losses. First, your younger brother dies after 2 days of fever. Then your aunt disappears on the forest road and only her basket is found. Then the neighbor's little girl is taken by pox. Yesterday, she had a face.
Today, she has a ruin. You see all this and learn the most important law of the village. Disaster never stays in one house. Today, it sits with them. Tomorrow, it may sit at your own table. If no one can stop it, then someone must be blamed for it. By the time you are 12, you already know how to lower your eyes when a man speaks, how to stop talking before it becomes dangerous, how not to eat too quickly, even when your stomach claws at you, how to hide fatigue, how to scrub blood from your linen before anyone notices. You are not raised toward strength, you are trained toward caution. A girl does not become grown in your world when she chooses to. She becomes grown when other people begin to look at her as something that can be taken, traded, struck, or accused. You begin helping the village healer because your mother is wearing down and your house needs another crust of bread. The healer is called Marta. Her hands are thick-knuckled and hard as roots. Her nails are always dark with dirt. Her voice is low and dry. Her hut stands a little apart from the village, which already says plenty. Too close to others is dangerous. Too far is dangerous too. You carry water, hang herbs to dry, pound seeds in a mortar, scrub knives, boil cloth, and wash the rags used in childbirth. You hold a newborn who never breathes. You hold afterbirth still warm from the body. You learn that birth and death stand much closer together than churchmen like to admit. Marta never teaches you spells. She teaches you how to look at the tongue of a sick man, at the cloudiness of urine in a pot, at the edges of a wound, at the color of blood after a miscarriage, at the breathing of an old woman through the night. She knows that wine on a wound may sometimes save a life, that if pus is not released, flesh will rot from the inside, that a woman after a hard labor needs warmth, clean cloth, broth, and rest, though she usually gets none of them. There is no wonder in what Marta does, only close attention, hard hands, and years spent beside pain. The first time you are called out at night, it is for the miller's wife. Labor has turned ugly. Wind drives wet ice into your face as you hurry there with Marta. The lantern smokes and jerks in your hand. Inside the house, it is hot, foul, and crowded. The laboring woman lies on a bench, hair plastered to her forehead, eyes gone glassy with pain. You hold her knees apart. Marta barks orders. The woman screams until the sound tears apart. There is blood, water, slime, steam, and dirty cloth. At last the child slides free. Blue, silent. Marta rubs his back hard. He coughs once. The whole room exhales, as if everyone has just been pulled back from the edge. After nights like that, people stop looking at you like a child, but they do not look at you like an equal either. You have become useful. That is dangerous. Need turns quickly into dependence. Dependence breeds resentment. Resentment breeds whispers. Women come for herbs to bring on bleeding. Men come muttering for remedies they do not want named. Mothers come for fever. Old men come for the ache in their joints. Widows come for sleep. You are allowed close to the hidden failures of other people's bodies. That makes them ashamed. And shame rarely stays shame for long. It usually hardens into anger. You marry not for love, but for structure. Love is not what keeps roofs standing. Your husband's name is Hans. He is not old, not especially cruel, not especially gentle. Mostly he is tired. His hands are split from work. His nose was broken years ago and healed crooked. He smells of damp wool and old labor. He works on another man's land, bows to another
man's measure, fears another man's displeasure. Your house is small and drafts through every gap in winter, but it is your draft, your hearth, your dirt, your hunger. The first years of marriage blur together into work, pregnancy, smoke, bleeding, washing, fatigue, and silence. You bear a son, then a daughter, then another child who lives only 6 days. Hans drinks when he can. When he cannot, he grows quieter. Sometimes he is rough, sometimes merely absent in the same room. You do not wait for tenderness. You count flour. You check your children for heat. You patch clothes. You stuff moss into the cracks in the wall. You dry herbs from the summer and pray they will last the winter. You go on because going on is the only habit that matters. As Marta grows older, more people begin to come to you first. Her sight clouds. Her hands still work, but slower now. You deliver babies, lance infections, dress burns, and set broken fingers. You help a boy gutted by a boar live long enough to keep his breath. You give a widow something to make her sleep after she buries her third child. You do not save everyone. You know too much to pretend that. Most of the time, you are only helping pain unfold at a slower pace. But sometimes that is enough for people to remember your name. Sometimes it is enough for them to fear it. Then the first true blow comes. Drought. The fields crack open. The grain heads stay thin and weak. The stream shrinks down to a trickle. Hens die. Children's bellies swell from bad food and too little of it. Men curse the sky and the landlord in low voices, but they curse loudly at home, at their wives. Old people begin muttering about signs, about the wrong kind of wind, about milk going sour too fast, about a cow drying up after someone passed by the gate. When bread grows scarce, the mind narrows. People stop wanting reasons. They want culprits. You begin to notice the looks changing. Before, people came to you with need. Now they come with watchfulness. Someone asks too casually what herbs you gather alone. Someone else remembers that a baby died after your visit, though the child was half dead before you ever arrived. A man says your eyes are too dark for a decent woman. Another swears your cat was seen near the byre where a cow later sickened. The village begins twisting together a rope out of small things. Such ropes are not made to hold buckets. They are made to tighten around a throat. Marta dies at the start of a wet autumn. Not in mystery, not in revelation. She just coughs and weakens and then begins to smell like the dead before she fully becomes one. Before she goes, she grips your wrist with her dry hand and says only this: "Help less, they notice more." It is not a blessing, it is a warning. 2 days later, they bury her. People come to mourn. Some weep. Many cross themselves too carefully, as if the old woman's corpse might still hear and answer. After her death, you become the woman everyone seeks in pain. That is when the next great turn arrives. The wife of the town clerk goes into labor with the child lying wrong. You know it as soon as you touch her belly. The labor is long, bad, and cruel, nearly a full day. The clerk paces the room in wine and sweat and panic. Candles gutter low. His wife stops screaming and starts moaning through clenched teeth, which is worse. You and another midwife try to turn the baby. Your hands are bloody to the wrist. Your back burns. At last, the child comes out dead. The mother survives the night, but only just.
A week later, she begins to bleed and then to burn with fever. By the end of the next day, she is dead too. The clerk now has 2 corpses in his house and no answer he can bear. Men like him know paper, seal, rank, debt, and record. They do not know what to do with blind chance. They cannot live under a roof with death unless they can point to a doorway through which it entered. So he looks for one, and you stand closest. At first, it is only rumor. He says you muttered over the water basin. Someone says you kept bone in your apron pocket. Someone else says you delayed the priest. There is talk of a knot tied strangely at your throat. Talk that you were too calm around blood. Talk that you said, if the child turns, it may live, as if that were arrogance instead of experience. Your knowledge begins to sound like defiance. To people who need God to govern every breath, practical skill in a woman can look like theft from heaven. The priest summons you. The church is cold and damp and smells of stone, wax, mildew, and old wool cloaks. He sits straight-backed, hands pale and clean. He asks where your knowledge comes from. You answer truthfully, from your mother, from Marta, from years beside sickbeds and labor benches. He does not like that answer. He asks whether you pray before giving herbs. Sometimes, you say. Whether you believe that only God heals. You know what he wants to hear, but your pause is too long, too tired. He notices. Men like him are trained to notice pauses. Winter comes early, and with it a sickness. Not plague, but vicious enough. Cough, shaking, blue lips, hot skin, weakness, and for some children, convulsions. You go from house to house until your legs hardly feel like part of you. Your hands are red from cold air and hot water. Your face cracks in the wind. Your back throbs. In some homes, you help. In some, you arrive too late. In some, a child dies while you are still crossing the yard. Each death feeds the same hunger. People do not become wiser under fear. They become more desperate for certainty. Your name is beginning to offer it. The first open accusation comes from the miller. His son has a fit and then lies still. 12 years old. Yesterday he was running. Today he is laid out on the table with his jaw tied shut. The miller's face is red and swollen with grief and rage. He shouts that your draught worsened the boy, that the child declined after your visit, that your hands were cold as grave soil. You want to tell him the boy was already dying when you arrived, but a crowd has formed, and crowds do not want sequence. They want shape. They want a story that seals shut neatly. They arrest you in daylight, in full view of the village. That is worse than darkness. Rope bites into your wrists at once. Someone spits near your hem. Someone looks away. Hans stands by a wall, pale as flour. He does not rush forward. He does not shout. Not because he believes them, because fear has already reached him too. You see it in his face and understand something clean and final. You are alone now. They march you through the mud. Chickens scatter. Children watch with the wide fascination they might bring to a slaughtered pig. The jail is no tower from a tale. It is a low stone hole beneath the hall. It stinks of urine, mildew, old straw, vomit, rust, and trapped damp. The floor is slick. The walls sweat. The straw is black with vermin. They pull off your head covering, search your hair, your mouth, your nails, your skin. They are looking for a mark, a hidden teat for a devil's familiar,
A mole or scar that can be turned into evidence. Your body stops being yours the moment they begin to inspect it. It becomes a sight to be interpreted by men who have already decided what it means. The first questioning is almost calm. The judge speaks as though discussing grain weights. The clerk sits nearby. The priest watches your face. They ask whether you made a pact with the devil, whether you flew by night, whether you spoiled milk, raised storms, killed infants, attended Sabbaths, summoned spirits, cursed fields. At first, the absurdity almost gives you courage. You want to explain how women bleed, how wounds fester, how babies die turning wrong in the womb, how fevers rise from filth and foul water. But very quickly you understand something essential. Facts were never invited into this room. Women from another village are brought to examine you, not out of mercy, so no one can object that a man touched you in search of corruption. Their hands are blunt and methodical. They prod every inch of skin looking for a place that feels no pain under a pin. If you flinch, it is ordinary flesh. If you do not, they will call it devil-marked. Your body is not honest enough for such a test. An old scar on your thigh is numb from a burn long ago. They prick it. You barely feel it. They exchange a look. That is enough. Then comes the time between interrogations, and that may be the filthiest part of all. Not the sharpest pain, but the waiting. You are given gray water, scraps of bread, sometimes porridge gritty with husk and sand. You sleep in bursts. Lice crawl along your neck. From another cell comes groaning, sometimes a man praying, sometimes someone laughing too long and then coughing until he retches. You try to count days by the strip of light at the door, but soon you lose them. In darkness, time rots faster than meat. At the second questioning, they no longer coax. They show you the tools: rope, wedges, irons, stocks. The room smells of tar, leather, sweat, and rust. The executioner is broad, practical, and not at all theatrical. He does not look like a monster. He looks like a craftsman. That makes it worse. They tell you to confess freely, to name others, to accept mercy. You understand what mercy means here, a faster death. But confession is never the end. It is a trap door that opens beneath other people too. So you refuse, at first. They hoist you by the rope with your hands bound behind your back. The first jerk feels like both shoulders are torn halfway out of your body. White light explodes through your skull. Your scream does not sound human to you. Your legs kick in open air. Rope slices into your wrists until warmth starts running down your hands. Someone asks questions while you swing. Names, nights, the devil, crops, dead children, milk, storms. At first, you try to answer. Then pain becomes larger than language. Your body betrays you before your mind does. Your mind only takes longer. When they drop you back onto the straw, your shoulders burn and then go numb. Your fingers do not obey you. There is iron in your mouth from blood and bile. You vomit water. You try to turn onto your side and cannot. The marks on your skin feel hot and wet. You try to picture your children, but their faces blur and slide away as if seen through dirty water. Pain eats memory by the edges. That is part of the design. Torture is not only for forcing speech, it is for breaking the shape of a person.
At the third questioning, they take your sleep. Bench, shouts, cold water, light in the face, footsteps, jolts when your head drops. After enough hours, thought begins to buckle. Stains on the walls start to look like eyes. A mouse sounds like whispering. They ask the same questions until no and I do not know become empty sounds. Then they begin feeding you the story themselves. Helpful, almost. Say Marta taught you secret arts. Say a black dog came to you. Say something touched you in the forest. Say you were promised power. You break in pieces, not all at once. First, you agree to some small thing just to make the moment stop. Yes, Marta taught you things about herbs. Yes, you had bad dreams. Yes, once in the woods you felt watched. They write these down greedily as if harvesting grain. Then they demand more. They always demand more. Once you step into their language, they can lead you through it by the throat. At some point, you hear yourself answering and no longer recognize your own voice. It has become useful to them. That is all that matters. You name names, not from malice, not even from choice exactly. They offer them first. The widow who came for sleeping herbs, the girl who asked for something to bring on her bleeding, the old man who cursed the priest, anyone who was already half imagined by the court. You give one name and then another because they will not stop until the machine is fed. And once it starts moving, you feel the horror of what you have done. You are no longer only inside the trap, you have become one of its moving parts. They read your confession back to you. Much of it is not yours. Midnight gatherings, a goat with a man's eyes, ointment for flight, murdered infants, lying with the devil, signing in blood. This is not biography. It is the shape of their fear, their disgust, their hunger to turn chaos into scandal. But in the end, they place a pen before you. Your hand barely works. You make a cross. Not because you believe what is written, because your strength is nearly gone and paper, seal, and office have finally beaten flesh. The trial comes in spring. People crowd in as if for market day. The room is hot with damp cloaks, candle grease, and human breath. They bring you thin, hollow-cheeked, trembling, one shoulder sitting higher than the other after the rope. Some whisper, some cross themselves. Some look relieved as though at last the world is becoming legible again. The priest speaks of corruption. The judge speaks of law. The clerk reads your confession aloud in a dry voice. He reads you as though he knows you better than you ever knew yourself. You are allowed a final word. At first, only a rasp comes out. Then speech. You say that you delivered children, washed wounds, dressed burns, boiled cloth, and watched too much death to ever invite more of it.
You say babies die without witches, harvests fail without curses. Frost does not need a woman's malice. Fever does not ask permission from the devil. But no one in the room came for truth. They came for closure. They came for an ending they could carry home and place over their fear like a lid. The sentence is spoken almost casually. Guilty, commerce with the devil, maleficum, murder by witchcraft, corruption of Christian souls, death by fire, but strangling first as mercy for confession. You hear it and feel surprisingly little at first. The worst fear came earlier under rope and sleeplessness. Now there is only exhaustion and a strange emptiness. Death no longer feels like a cliff. It feels like the last order in a long line of orders you were never allowed to refuse.
They keep you a few more days, to gather a crowd, perhaps, to question others from the names you gave, to finish the paperwork. In that time, Hans is allowed to see you. He smells of cold air, smoke, and shame. He does not cry. His eyes are red, but his voice is dry. He tells you his sister has taken the children, that your son asked when you were coming home, that he did not know what to do. You look at him and understand that he is telling the truth. He truly did not know. That truth is too small to forgive and too human to hate. On the day of execution, the sky hangs low and gray. The square is mud underfoot. The wood stacked for the fire looks damp outside and dry within. The post is darkened from earlier use. Everything has been arranged in advance, as neatly as a fair. They haul you in on a cart. Wheels creak. People crowd the edges. Some stand on barrels. Children are there too. That is part of the lesson. Fear must be taught early if obedience is to take root. In the crowd, you see faces you know. A woman whose infected hand you once saved. An old man whose fever you sat through. A girl who lived because you came quickly in the night. None step forward. The executioner works carefully. He ties you to the post. The rope under your arms is rough and hard. The mercy noose is looped around your neck. The priest murmurs something about repentance, but the wind tears the words away. You barely listen. You look at the clouds, at chimney smoke, at the mud around the people's boots, at little things. The world becomes sharply detailed just before the end. You smell wet wood, ash, tallow, sweat. You hear a child coughing in the crowd. Life is still happening all around your death. That may be the cruelest detail of all. When they tighten the rope around your neck, your sight bursts at the edges. Your throat closes inward. Sound leaves first, then air. Your legs jerk on their own. The world narrows to a hard point. You do not know whether the wood below has already been lit. You do not know whether the crowd sees your struggle as punishment or proof. At some point, you stop being wife, mother, healer, accused. You become a body ceasing, and for the court, that is enough. The fire is still necessary, not for you, for them, for spectacle, for symbol, for the comfort of seeing corruption turned visibly into smoke. After the strangling, your body takes flame in stages. Hair goes quickly. Cloth blackens. Fat hisses. Those standing nearest recoil from the smell. It is not the smell of myth, not the smell of hell, only cooked flesh, bitter, earthly, ordinary. Some turn away. Some keep staring until there is almost nothing left to see. They need to be certain evil can be burned down to ash. Afterward, what remains of you is gathered badly. Some ash stays in the pit. Some bone blackens further in the embers. Some pieces are scattered or poked apart like dangerous trash. There will be no grave marker with your name, no proper resting place. Law prefers not to remember the people it destroys. Authority works best when only the warning remains. Your children inherit not property, not protection, but stain. Your son will hear things whispered behind him. Your daughter will fare worse. People will search her face for your likeness not as love, but as threat. And yet, memory does not obey courts any better than hunger or plague ever did. Someone will remember you differently, not as a witch, but as the woman who came when labor turned bad, who knew how to dry wormwood in the rafters, who told people to wash wounds with hot water, who sat beside the fevered through the night. But such memory will be thin.
It will not clear your name. It will not return your children. It will not put your bones in the ground. History rarely repairs what a frightened community finds useful to break. Here is your life in hard numbers. About 34 years from one winter birth to the stake. 3 labors of your own, with 1 child dead in infancy. Hundreds of poultices, bandages, boiled cloths, bitter draughts, and bleeding women. Dozens of births with your hands deep in blood while men prayed outside. A few days of torture were enough to break your shoulders, your sleep, your certainty, and finally your tongue. One mark on a page erased decades of labor. You gained no land, no safety, no peaceful old age. You lost your body, your name, your house, your children, and the right to be remembered honestly. The myth says witch hunts were about darkness and superstition. The truth is meaner than that. They were about control, about finding a body to blame when the world refused to behave, about punishing the person who stood too near suffering and knew too much about it. You never wanted power. You wanted to survive winter, to stop bleeding, to turn a child in the womb, to cool a fever. But in a world where women are allowed to endure and not to know, useful knowledge can become a noose. You wanted order? This is what it is made from. You wanted purity? This is what it smells like. You wanted someone to blame? Here she is, tied to a post. If this life felt brutal, that means it worked. Go to the next story. Another century, another body, another sentence. But the question will be the same. When a world begins to break, who gets named as the cause?
If you want more dark history, watch the next video.